To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, that's all right. I don't remember very well.
Yeah, two things go, it's going to memory and I can't remember what you.
All right, this is the regular meeting of the Britton Borough Council, Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. We had a brief meeting earlier before this to discuss real estate matters. So the call to order. Amanda, will you?
Jennifer Salisbury, here. Robin Pillman, here. Peter Lamontagne,
Here.
John Wolf,
Here.
Lori Kesselman, here. Lauren Crasco, here. Steve Asher,
Here.
and James Donovan.
Here. Good. The next item on the agenda is consideration of consent agenda items, namely the April 12, 2022 meetings, the bills list for April 2022, and approval of Arbor Day proclamation. Can I have a motion to? I need a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Saying none. The next item is for residents' remarks for things which are not on the agenda, and if you could keep them fairly brief to 2 or 3 minutes. June.
One of my gripes, I guess you might call it, is about Borough Council attending things that are being held in the borough. We had our wreath laying thing in December, and the only 2 people that came that were from Borough Council, and they were Borough Council people that were going off, was Mary Pat and David. I think that I realize that not all of you can go to everything, okay? But we do know what events are held annually, every year. I would suggest that maybe you make a list out and everybody sign up for at least 2 events. Because it was very embarrassing. There were people there from Ottsville and other places to help lay these wreaths. And we also have the school district of Hatboro Horsham that comes and helps and gives us water, and they pass out pretzels, I believe it is. And, you know, they look around and they don't see anybody, if they're from the borough, they don't see anybody from elected officials. And I think it's important for them to see some elected officials at the different events. And it's not just the wreath laying, but there's Covered Bridge Day coming up. There's Duck Derby. There's that car thing that Lauren takes care of. You know, we have several things, and I realize not everybody can come to everyone, but maybe if you could have a list and pass it around amongst you, and then make sure that people would come. The other thing is, I would like to, I don't know how many of you know, but there was mold found in our historical room. Amanda knows. We went down and we opened a box and it was full of black mold. We left. We didn't stay down there. Obviously, I guess during COVID, there must have been a leak. And people were called in to remediate it as far as fix up so that the water wouldn't keep on coming. But they must have put the boxes down on the floor and they soaked up water and whatnot. And some of the books, we don't know if we can clean them up or not. They were from Mrs. Bruner, some of the stuff. We were just sick when we saw it. So what I would like to, I don't know, I've asked around, nobody on council seems to know about it. Granted, it happened during COVID, but, and when, Samantha was here. But I would suggest that there be a, I don't know if you call it a rule, but that if there is something that goes wrong in the Borough Hall, and it doesn't necessarily be historical, it could be any one of our committees that might be affected by papers or something being, hurt. That council is definitely told, and whoever those people on that committee, somebody on that committee would be told. If I wasn't home, there's a couple other people that could have been called to be told about it. So that is another suggestion that I have, that you would, kind of try to take care of that. Okay? Thank you.
I'm Matthew Dunny. Just want to say, thank you for patching the holes on women. Although there's a few more on the edges. And, still looking forward to taking the signs down at the wrong direction on Loop Street on Matthew Avenue. Because it is a safety problem, because people fly down the street thinking they can get through, and when they can't, they fly down worse coming back. So you don't live there, you don't see it. And there's a lot of children walking to school on that street. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much, June and, next is the review of written staff reports and elected official reports, starting with the manager's report.
We're still waiting on our HOP permit from PennDOT to get started on the sidewalk project. Del Val's officially moved out of the basement, out of the first floor of this building. So one of the ideas we had for some of the space, especially to get those documents out of the basement, is actually to move those documents that the Historical Society has in the basement into this building that way, and put shelves in so nothing's on the floor. Nothing's below ground level anymore to worry about leaks and things like that. So that's one of the projects that we're going to look into, converting one of the rooms downstairs into, as well as evaluating what we can do with the whole first floor. It does need to be cleaned up. Del Val left a bit of a mess, so they did take out some furniture, but there's still a lot of stuff down there. Other than that, our real estate tax collection at the end of April, we're at 88% of all of our real estate collection. We should hit pretty close to 99% by the end of the year. Traditionally, we're only really needing maybe $20,000 worth of our entire budget. So, which is good.
Well, we don't have the police here, so,
And they had a scheduling conflict, but they did not have any additional announcements or anything that needed to be made.
all right. Any further discussion on either of those issues?
Is the first floor here, can that be used for anything
Yeah, one of the ideas.
non-government oriented?
I mean, one of the ideas we were talking about in the office was converting it into like more of an extra conference room, council chambers type of thing if we needed something like that, but.
Non-government, like they would pay rent.
Almost, yeah. And again, I'm not thinking anything specific. I'm just thinking.
I think
just
before we
in-
would try to run it out
literally
again, we
in general,
definitely
you know,
need to.
Yeah.
if somebody
do
could
some
use
work.
some office space, could it be rented out for some purpose?
Potentially, I think we need to spend some money to actually clean it up
Yeah,
and
it's-
make it a bit more usable than it is right now. It's very choppy as well, so it's divided up and
That's old too.
it's old. It's
I
old.
wasn't aware Del Val had that.
They just left
He
last.
just left.
Why did they
They
leave?
moved their service to campus. They haven't been in that building in probably, the whole time I've been here, they've never actually used it. But they have a space over there, so they just found, got out. So we can finally use our building.
I don't know that,
No, I don't think so.
no, I think.
Samantha had looked into renting it out, but at that time, and this was a number of years ago, the argument was it's pretty minimal rent. It's a low ceiling area, and
No windows, just, it's a dungeon. It'd be perfect for, you know, it'd be perfect for what they were talking about using it for.
Yeah, we could be stuck in the.
Yeah.
What the heck?
The room I have in mind would be the dungeon. Probably.
Well,
All right.
Well, it used to be an old police station. so
I know,
it does-
and the
it does
administration
have
office.
historical,
It used to be the administration office,
yeah,
but it was dark and
It's divided up weird and I can't like it's just.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is committee activity review, questions and announcements, and I would like to have Tom give his presentation before to start this off.
This should be all set to go. Everybody see that? I'm looking right at the sun.
That was something.
There, all right, that's better. All right, Peter, if I go over an hour. You won't. All right, I am giving this presentation tonight on behalf of the Birdtown Committee. We are aware that I think 4 of the 7 members of council and our mayor and our borough manager, none of you were here when we became a Birdtown, so we thought maybe this was a good time to remind everybody what it means to be a Birdtown. And as of this year, we're also a National Wildlife Federation certified as a community wildlife habitat. And the 2 programs really do go hand in hand. So this is just a talk about what it means to be a Birdtown and what it means to be certified as a community wildlife habitat. And the big question I think I'm trying to answer tonight is, what does this say about us? What does this say about New Britain? So to talk a little bit about the Birdtown program first, the Birdtown program began in 2010. It was a Audubon, Pennsylvania initiative, and it was described on the website as a working partnership between Pennsylvania Audubon and various municipalities throughout the state, mostly in southeastern Pennsylvania, to promote conservation and community-based actions to create a healthy, more sustainable environment, not just for birds, but for people as well. The intent was to create a culture of conservation, they call it, in these municipalities, where everyone is a potential steward of nature in their own backyard. And that's the real power of the Birdtown program. It's what people do on their own properties, in their own backyards. Specific stewardship goals of the program: to create and restore natural habitat for birds, pollinators, and other wildlife, and to encourage people living in these communities to learn about and use more native plants in their yards and public spaces. And I'll talk a little bit more about why native plants are so important. There was an initiative to get people, and still is, to sign what they called the Healthy Yard Pledge. A pledge to do all of these things: consider using more native plants in your landscape, removing invasive plants, reducing stormwater runoff, eliminating the use of pesticide on your property, and providing for birds and supporting those birds that show up. We also, this was a big part of the program, encouraged residents to register their properties in what was called the Bird Habitat Recognition Program. The idea was to create bird habitat, register your property, get a yard sign like this, and let everybody know what you're doing. The sign says that PA Audubon recognizes that the people who care for this property pledge to provide healthy habitat that supports birds, butterflies, and There are a lot of these rights on this throughout the book. How do you provide healthy bird habitat? You do all these things. Plant diversity of native plants, provide not just food, but also cover nesting sites for birds. Remove invasive alien species, stop the use of pesticides, put up nest boxes, bird feeders, provide fresh water. So creating bird habitat anytime you do any of these things. As most of you know, at this point, Birdtown now is no longer part of Audubon, Pennsylvania, because Audubon, Pennsylvania doesn't exist anymore. It merged with Maryland Audubon and Washington DC Audubon. It is now Mid-Atlantic Audubon, and they no longer support the Birdtown program. So there is now a new entity, Birdtown, Pennsylvania, which is supporting the Birdtown program, and the program today is actually more sustainable, it's stronger, we're expanding again, and there's much more increased accountability. The mission and the goals of the Birdtown program have not changed. Those are the new road signs that we should be getting soon. That's the mission statement on the Birdtown, Pennsylvania website. Very similar to the mission statement of the Birdtown program when it was part of Audubon, PA. Talks about a partnership with municipalities to promote community-based conservation to create healthy habitat. Again, not just for birds and wildlife, but for people as well. These are all the specific goals of Birdtown, Pennsylvania. We are doing almost all of this in the borough. I would say the big difference between the Birdtown program then and now is that Birdtown, Pennsylvania doesn't have its own habitat certification program. If you go to the website of Birdtown, Pennsylvania, there's actually information of about 10 or 12 different habitat registration or certification programs, including the bird habitat program, which Audubon is still supporting. And of course, the National Wildlife Habitat Program, which we are supporting here in the borough as well. Some of these are more rigorous certifications than others. But we're encouraging people to register their properties in whichever and as many of these programs as they want. So why so much emphasis on native plants? Some of us know, some of us don't know why native plants are so important to wildlife. But this is at the heart of both the Birdtown program and the National Wildlife Federation program as well. Why native plants? They have evolved to adapt to local conditions. They're more resistant to drought, to disease, to pests. They require, once they're established, less maintenance, means less water, fertilizer, pesticides, and most importantly, they're crucial to the survival of not just birds, but insects and pollinators and wildlife in general. Doug Tallamy is a hero of mine, as some of you know. Most of us on the Birdtown Committee have read his books, have gone to hear him speak. He really is a strong voice in the native plant movement. What we plant in our landscapes determines what can live in our landscapes.
And I would say that for even people who don't know anything about it, he's a really neat person to hear talk. He speaks quite well, and his books are very well written.
Yeah. He spoke at Del Val a couple of years ago. Why native plants? They benefit insects in a number of different ways. Some provide pollen and nectar, food for insects, for butterflies, for bees, and other pollinators. Some of them serve as host plants for the larvae of insects, caterpillars. are the larvae of moths and butterflies that will only lay their eggs on specific native plants.
Not to interrupt you, but even hummingbirds eat insects.
Sure.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Lots of birds do. And a lot, probably most plant-eating insects are specialists. They can only eat the leaves of certain native plants that they've evolved with. So without these plants, you don't have these insects. We all know about monarchs and how dependent they are on milkweed. Monarch butterflies will lay their eggs on milkweed, only milkweed, milkweed species, because that's the only thing that monarch caterpillars can eat. So if you don't have milkweed, you won't have monarchs. And the population of monarchs in the United States has fallen by 90% in the last 20 years, in large part because of the loss of milkweed habitat. There used to be lots of hedgerows with milkweed. Those hedgerows don't exist anymore. Pesticides have wiped out the quote unquote weeds that used to border fields. So monarchs are in danger. But it's not just monarch butterflies that need specific host plants. Lots of butterflies and moths need specific host plants. So if you don't have these host plants, you don't have these butterflies. You know, it's not just about nectar. Butterfly bush provides nectar for butterflies, but it's invasive and it's not native and it doesn't host any caterpillars. Native plants also provide lots of food for birds, seeds and nuts and berries and nectar. Non-native plants provide berries too, but the berries of native plants are a lot more nutritious, higher in fat,